Dude, I don't know why people are coming in here asking me why Jamal Bowman pulled the fucking fire alarm. How am I supposed to know? Bitch, I don't know. I've only talked to him a couple times. Anyway, let's get back to the goddamn government shutdown and the crisis averted.
The bill is passed, and with that objection, the motion to reconsider is laid on the table.
There is nothing funnier to me. Like, listen, it doesn't matter what your politics are about, like funding Ukraine, Russia's unjustifiable fucking invasion of Ukraine. But there is something hilarious about like a Republican leader being like, we have to fund Ukraine. And that's why I'm not passing the spending package, which I'm glad he did because they got everything in this one, as far as I understand it. Then he was supposed to do that. It's crazy to me that 5 Republicans would just like destroy the entirety of the government.
Well, Lauren, there was the gavel. So it has passed. The stopgap measure has passed. And now it's on its way to the Senate.
Yeah, exactly. And that is the next stop. That is the next big question. What is going to happen over there? How quickly can they move? Obviously, we are going to be watching very closely for what Chuck Schumer says and does next. But the momentum coming from the House of Representatives now, and that is such a big turn of events given where we were just a couple of hours ago.
Are a good number of the senators on the Hill today? So
absolutely. They had lunch together. They had an opportunity to have these conversations. So yes, they are prepared because they were supposed to be having a procedural vote. They are all here ready to vote. So we will just see what the next step is.
So conceivably, Lauren, the amount of time that Republicans and Democrats had in the House to read through the 72 pages. Simultaneously, those copies were sent over to the Senate as well. So they could have used that same amount of time to read through it, pour over all those details, and conceivably have a consensus themselves in a matter of hours, since the clock is ticking toward a shutdown at midnight?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. And as we've said, you know, these conversations weren't happening in a vacuum.
Yeah.
It wasn't just House Democrats making a decision by themselves. This was a discussion that was had with the White House, a discussion that I'm sure that they had with Democratic colleagues in the United States Senate. So obviously we just need to wait and see what happens. But I think that, you know, this is a strong indication that Democrats do not want the government to shut down, a strong indication that House Speaker Kevin McCarthy did not want to be in a position where Republicans were blamed for shutting the government down. So now all eyes are on the United States Senate and the Majority Leader, Chuck Schumer.
Okay.
What do you mean? He literally could not, like, New York Representative Jamal Bowman pulls fire alarm in the House building, but it says it was an accident. Wait, what? Bowman's office said it was an accident. The congressman told reporters later Saturday, I was trying to get to a door. I thought the fire alarm would open the door, and I pulled the fire alarm to open the door by accident. I was just trying to get to my vote, and the door that's usually open wasn't open, it was closed. Wait, what the fuck? I think he thought it was an emergency door. Bro, the intrusive thoughts won, dude. What the fuck? That's hilarious. Yeah, we need door control. Okay. So, skipping the juror and the fucking dude who killed the, I mean, didn't kill, failed to kill the YouTuber, and getting to the government shutdown. Kevin McCarthy was stuck between a rock and a hard place. The rock is the 5 sick freak Republicans, or I mean, I guess it was like 21, but, you know, 5 major ones that are just like being a thorn on his side, who say the moment that you fucking collaborate with the Democratic Party, we're going to unseat you, which he had to give those assurances to those freaks. The Never Kevers, right? Who we love and support. So the Never Kevers were just like throwing a fucking tantrum with like some of the most insane demands, okay? Some of the most insane demands. And we're like, oh yeah, you have to give in to these demands and like, you know, pass this in the House with our votes, which by the way would have, you know, never passed the Senate anyway. So that would have still effectively shut down the government. He had an opportunity to either do that, work with the psychopathic Never Kever caucus, and you know, put forward a bill that was not going to pass in the Senate, or go along with a deal that they had already cut, which meant, you know, working with the Democratic Party, which would immediately cause him to lose his job. So we'll see what happens here.
And of course, it's got to pass the Senate. So still, you know, the clock is ticking toward the potential government shutdown without those votes. But if there's a way in which to assess this stage here, with the House now voting to pass the stopgap measure, is this considered a victory or a defeat as it pertains to Republican leadership? Not as it pertains to, you know, government staying open or not, but, you know, all eyes were on Republican leadership in this stopgap measure.
Yeah. That's certainly going to be in the eye of the beholder, Frederica. I mean, you saw House Speaker McCarthy say repeatedly that this is what a leader does, that this is what an adult in the room does. They make sure the government stays open. But there are going to be people on his far right who think that
Sims are taking victory laps. Yeah, I mean, in a weird way, they should. Because the reality is, this is the dumbest situation of all time, and it like perfectly demonstrates once again like what is just fundamentally wrong with the Republican Party. But the other reality, the scarier side of this conversation, is that like we should never have this happen. And given the way that our government currently operates, there is no real way to fix it. Truly striking L for House conservatives demanding massive domestic spending cuts. A few days ago, far-right GOP was insisting 10% of cuts to domestic programs were insufficient. Now it looks like they're going to get 0% of cuts instead, albeit also no Ukraine dollars for the time being. It's just so odd that, like, we just have to have this political back and forth, like, what, every 45 days? It's so dumb. It's not a real conversation. That's what makes me so mad about it. And the worst part about it is that pretty much everyone that's playing along in this political theater knows it's fake. Does that make sense? I don't know what else to say about it other than it's pure political theater. And everybody knows it's pure political theater, and yet they choose to act out their roles instead. Like, nobody just takes a deep breath and goes, dude, what are we doing? Like, this is all fake. This is nonsense. Like, we're just making this shit up. As the EU chatter, it's just wild that this conversation even happens in Ireland. I don't even know the budget is happening until it's announced and discussed, like, for max one day. Yes. Because that is how it works everywhere. That is technically how it works in America too. That's the other part. It's just that any kind of obstruction or any kind of hurdle can always be used by the Democratic Party and the Republican Party as though it's like a serious one that we cannot live without. And you know, therefore we have to have like genuine deliberation, genuine back and forth on the matter. When in fact, it's just another technical hurdle that does not need to exist and therefore is very frustrating.
he betrayed the Republican conference, that he betrayed promises that he made to become the speaker, and he could face potential consequences for that. I think that Matt Gaetz has been very clear that he is deeply frustrated with the Speaker of the House, and it's not just Gaetz, there are others as well who have questioned McCarthy's leadership. But I think that there are...
I think the media is wrong for this too. Like, I think the media's coverage of this as though it's like a serious issue. I mean, it is a serious issue if it happens, but like, whenever CNN covers this government shutdown as though these are like serious political demands that these never-kevers are making with like genuine ideological differences, like, it's just wrong. Like, they're lying to you. They know that there is no serious political disagreements here. It's all just theater. And they are allowing this theatrical display to continue by leaning into the seriousness. You know what I mean? They're like, oh, yeah, there's like some serious differences. There's some serious disagreements here. It's just very odd. Like, why are you doing that? I feel like at this point you're basically also doing a disservice to the public.
Others in the conference, Republicans who might be running in swing states for whom a government shutdown would have been extremely detrimental to their reelection, who think that the speaker did the right thing today. So leadership and whether or not McCarthy did the right thing, that's really in the eye of different members within his conference. But obviously there's a huge question mark about what the future for McCarthy looks like now.
This measure now, as is, makes its way over to the Senate. Would there ever be any potential?
Dude, I don't know why people are coming in here asking me why Jamal Bowman pulled the fucking fire alarm. How am I supposed to know? Bitch, I don't know. I've only talked to him a couple times on the phone. And that was years ago when I thought he was like way more progressive than he actually is. Like, he's not my best friend. What the fuck? It's so silly.
Potential of any modifications be ahead of a vote?
That's certainly possible, but time is of the essence right now. We have hours to go until a government shutdown, and changing a bill takes time. You'd have to then send it back over to the House for passage. So, you know, do they want to go back and forth with a volleying effort? I think that remains to be seen. And, you know, obviously there's just a couple of hours now until midnight.
Yeah, and we've yet to hear from Senator McConnell today, similar to how we have heard from House Speaker McCarthy a couple of times today, you know, lending hope to this moment. And now this stopgap measure has.
Senate Democrats have the opportunity to do the funniest thing. Just for the fuck of it. Obviously, they wouldn't do that because that would destroy them. But just for the fun. Just for the funsies, they're just like, yeah, you know, actually, we thought this budget sucks.
Received its full endorsement as it will move on to the Senate. Should we make any guesses as to how long before they're able to assemble everyone in the Senate before a vote is to happen?
Well, I think that because members were expecting that there was a procedural vote today, they are around. Obviously, it's always another question entirely how quickly the Senate can be assembled and members can be on the floor, but they were expecting that there was going to be action. Obviously, members recognize that there's a deadline looming, and, you know, they can be there pretty quickly.
Okay, and Lauren, before I let, I'm sorry, what was that? I'm hearing from one. Okay, I am hearing from my producer that House Speaker McCarthy might be coming out very soon. You're going to see him before I do, Lauren, so I know you've got eyes behind your head. You can see him from all angles, so when he comes out, I understand if you have to break away. If you could, Lauren, for us, quickly, just kind of summarize what this stopgap spending bill is all about. It does allow for money toward natural disasters, but it's without Ukraine assistance. What else?
Yeah, this is a 45-day short-term spending bill that funds the government through mid-November. Obviously, this is going to give them a couple of weeks to negotiate a fuller package, but this is where things could get very tricky because House Republicans have outlined to their members a very aggressive schedule that includes voting on individual one-year spending bills that would fund various agencies across the federal government. That schedule and those bills still face long odds in the House, but they are conservative bills that are going to be dead on arrival in the United States Senate. So even though there's this brief moment of bipartisanship potentially happening.
Hey, Chad, has Hassan talked about his stance on Ukraine spending? Don't want to derail the coverage, but I'm curious. I don't think I would spend a dime on Ukraine without conditions. Like, the aid should be conditional, but of course it's never going to be conditional. I don't have an issue with like the aid going to Ukrainian small businesses, in my opinion. Like, but not those kinds of conditions. For the record, let me clarify. Aid from the United States of America under the auspices of U.S. aid oftentimes have conditions of austerity and conditions of control. Not that kind of conditions. Conditional aid, as far as on the weapons side, should revolve around like the obvious boundaries that the American government already sets, like not using it on Russian soil, blah, 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 better tracking measures, but also, you know, with an express purpose of like inevitably ending the war. Why not on Russian soil? I mean, ask the American government. What do you mean, why not on Russian soil? It's all a matter of, it's a delicate balance of it is a delicate balance of like not upsetting Russia enough, kind of, from the American perspective at least, that they don't consider it to be, like an act of war between America and Russia. But they're slowly but surely, like, you know, maxing out on the tension side. Ultimately, aren't they already fighting on soil Russia claims as it is? No. We're talking about like mainland Russia, like straight up fucking like Russia. Prior to Russian invasion of Ukraine borders Russia. You know what I mean? And they kind of fucking drop some munitions on Russian territories from time to time. They do targeted strikes and whatnot. And then they also do like drone strikes every now and then. But I think it hasn't gotten to a point where like Russia makes a bigger fuss about it, I guess. But the drones and stuff that they drop on Russian soil, especially like deeper into Russian soil, is oftentimes not American shit. But yeah, my perspective on this has always been the same. Like any kind of aid should be given to Ukraine on the ultimate goal of trying to, you know, end this war, end this conflict. Like Ukrainian territorial gains and W's are good because they're just and they're fair, but those territorial W's should be specifically so that like you can get back to the bargaining table with Russia and create conditions for a ceasefire. Like when Ukraine reclaims his territory, that's not specifically to liberate Ukraine. It's also to show to Russia that like you have better leverage at the bargaining table, right? That's why weapons are necessary in that process. That much I understand. But if the party that is like funding you has no interest in you actually negotiating, then it sucks. You know what I mean? Then it's just like it's never ending war of attrition.
You could then see a scenario where
even Zelensky said they want 1991 borders. Yeah, that doesn't matter. Zelensky can say that, but Zelensky's not a fucking idiot. Like he's also literally agreed to different terms before, or at least like politically has openly said he would kick the can back 15 years down the line for a separate referendum. Do you get what I'm saying? Like, it's just posturing. He knows it's posturing.
everyone digs back in their respective corners as they try to continue this fight to fund the government for a year.
Mm-hmm. And of course, also at the heart are paychecks. You know,
Borger is also correct. Our Georgian correspondent says, yeah, but I also think their expectations were that by now Ukraine would have pushed Russia back further, and meanwhile Russia is digging deeper for a longer war. Yeah, the counteroffensive that was supposed to launch in the spring never fully launched.
Operating at for the last year, and obviously it is a sigh of relief for a lot of federal workers who didn't know if when they went to work on Monday they were going to be going to work at all, whether they would be going to work without pay, and what the future really presented. Because there was a scenario where if you get into a prolonged shutdown, it's very hard to get out of it, right? Because both sides are dug in. It takes time for negotiators to start to feel that political pressure, feel the pain of Americans who are experiencing a lack of government services, and really that to start to shake things loose. So obviously,
bro, that would require any politician of any party to have like a shred of morality in their hard drive, okay? They don't. Like, the idea that Republicans are more considerate and careful about the shutdown if they're up for re-election is a real one, okay? That's a real political calculation that they make, because they're like, oh, how much of this will look bad for us? Because right now it looks like we're a fucking clown show. Right now it looks like, you know, especially at the national level, fuck the presidential election, but like every other election, our party is looking real bad. because it's infighting, and like we can't even throw the stink on the Democrats. Which, by the way, ironically, when Democrats held the House and the Senate, that was what was going on with the Democrats. If you remember, I kept saying it's always bad to be infighting and not being able to whip your fucking caucuses, because everyone will look at you and go, wow, Democrats can't even pass their legislation effectively. They can't even do that in a fast and expedient manner. What the fuck is going on? Joe Manchin and Kyrsten Sinema are the guys that like fucked over the Democratic Party's legislative agenda. And it's not even just them. It's a revolving, it's a rotating villain, right? But still, like that made the Democratic Party look bad because no one thinks about how every Republican is voting against these spending packages that are ultimately good for Americans, right? No one thinks about the demons on the other side if the entire media is covering the other stopgap, which happens to be inside of the Democratic Party. And it's the same thing happening with the Republicans right now, right? Absolutely zero people will blame the Democrats for this government shutdown because it's not up to the Democrats. Like the Republicans can't even put a fucking bill to the table until today. So that's a calculation, a real calculation that Republicans up for re-election have to make, where they probably tell Kevin McCarthy, like, dude, stop fucking around. Like, we have to push a spending bill because otherwise this is our fuck up. Like, it's good if we put a spending bill forward and then the Democrats say no to it or something, and the demands are relatively reasonable, and yet they were able to, and they're the ones who are unreasonable for not pushing that spending package. But we can't even put forward a spending package. Like, what the fuck are we doing? It's so embarrassing. So that political calculation on the Republican front is real. Like, oh my God, everyone realizes how fucking bad we are at our jobs. However, anything beyond that, like, oh, the morality of like Republican legislators caring about furloughed government employees, like, no, they don't give a shit about that, dude. Get the fuck out of here. They want to fire half the federal agencies and people who work there. Like, that's like a open goal that they have. They don't give a fuck.
That is always a concern, and it's a concern that McCarthy actually laid out repeatedly to members of his conference in private meetings. If you think that our hand is going to be stronger when we get into a government shutdown, you're wrong, because of that factor of once people are in pain, once people are feeling the effects of a shutdown, there is a lot of pressure to get out of it. And the history of government shutdowns in this country reveal that usually the side that shut the government down doesn't get what they want in the end because there's so much political.
When did you become a Republican? When I stopped being a libtard, brother. When I grew, when I had a heart, I was a liberal. When I had a brain, I became a Republican.
Pain that they're the ones who are willing to come back to the negotiating table.
And again, while this vote has passed in the House, it is yet to make it over to the Senate. Hopefully that's something that will happen for us to eyewitness and you to talk us through one more time. But in the meantime, even once that were to happen, to avert a U.S. government shutdown.
No, government shutdowns are not a thing, at least on budgets anywhere else on the planet.
As you mentioned, this is for 45 days. So the hard work resumes, and perhaps it will be even more, tougher fought in time for, by November 17, right? So potentially what is happening at that time? How engaged might the president be on Capitol Hill as he was, months ago? Or might this be an invitation at the White House for members of parties on all sides to come to the White House? Let's work this out. Let's come up with a plan that everyone's going to like so that by November 17, we're not back at this juncture again.
Yeah, and again, this is
Yeah, why would they do that? They didn't have to have this happen this time either. They do that because they want to fucking have fake fights. Except this time around, the Never Kevers gave a gift to the Democratic Party by fucking up the process before the Republican caucus could organize with a budget that the Democrats would have to say no to. That's funny. I thought you were known as a left winger. Whoops. Oh my God. Some people. Let's not ruin this guy's opinion, I think. Yeah, you're right, brother. I know. Fuck. Left winger, not me. You kidding me? Better dead than red, brother.
Another moment where McCarthy's going to have to make a decision. Does he continue with this process that he's promised a lot of his conservative members to work through one-year spending bills on an individual basis at levels that Republicans want them marked up at, or given the fact that there's only a couple of weeks, does he start to work with Democrats to secure that process? And all indications yesterday were that he wanted to move through that process with Republicans. But obviously what happened today is a new dynamic. There's a new question. But, you know, I think that Democrats are probably wishing that everyone had just stuck to the agreement that was made back in May, when there was a agreement to set top line spending numbers and start the process sooner. So I think that there's a lot of people who think this probably could have been avoided, right?
Yeah. All right, Lauren Fox, you're amazing.
Here. Major U.S. government shutdowns because we're fucking clown asses. Here we go.
Came into existence, but in charge of funding the government since America came into existence. But these shutdowns are a more recent occurrence. The main problem right now is there are a group of House Republicans who want to use this legislation to include some of their policy preferences, including returning to Trump-era border policies and making cuts to aid for Ukraine and programs concerning childcare, housing, and medical research. Republicans have only a narrow majority in the House, meaning they can only afford a few defections if they want to pass something without Democratic help. The legislation this group wants passed would not make it through the Senate or get signed by President Biden.
We made a deal, we shook hands, we said this is what we're going to do, and now they're reneging on the deal.
I mean, he's right.
In the event of a government shutdown, about 4 million federal employees would not be paid. Some of them would be furloughed, but those deemed essential would be asked to work without pay, and then they'd receive back pay at the conclusion of the shutdown. It's possible the effects are different in different areas of the country. The governor of Utah, for example, has already said they're going to use state funds to keep the national parks there open. It's likely that things like food inspections and workplace inspections and programs that help with nutritional assistance will also be affected. But it's also possible state funding could be used to supplement some of the government food programs that usually are paid for from the federal coffers. Some things that won't be affected are Social Security checks, or if you receive your health care, Medicare, Medicaid, or Veteran Services. The Postal Service also will not be affected. Among those who will still receive their paychecks during a shutdown are members of Congress, whose salaries are funded through a permanent appropriation.
That's crazy. Damn, you mean to tell me that when the government shuts down, congressional salaries are not impacted? That's wild. Huh. That's interesting. Huh.
Bill.
Funding the government is one of the most basic fundamental responsibilities of Congress, and if the Republicans in the House don't start doing the job, we should stop electing them.
House Speaker Kevin McCarthy could cut a deal with Democrats, but if he...
I thought that was a good thing. You can't be serious, right? Like permanent appropriations for congressional salaries. Like, yeah. Do permanent appropriations for everything the government funds and shut the fuck up. That's my argument. Kind of odd that the only thing that gets permanent appropriations is, you know, congressional salaries.
If he did so, it would likely result in a revolt from the hard right members of his caucus. He has cut deals with all sorts of different ideologies within his party, from more moderate members to the hardest right members of the caucus, in order to get his speakership, which took more than 8 dozen votes. His position now is trying to untangle that while also keeping the federal government open.
Not that they need it anyway, given they just inside trade. Yeah, that's ironic because, like, the justification for why the congressional salary is $174,000 a year is quite literally so they're not susceptible to outside influences. Meanwhile, these horny fucks get the $174,000, they bank it, and then they still do insider trading. So it doesn't even fucking matter how much they get paid at that point. Oh, we need people from all different kinds of backgrounds who can live on that salary. Fuck. Sorry.
And he may have to...
Sean Hannity would never burp in the microphone and never serve you the top of the hour ad break, and I'm doing both right now, which is pretty crazy. At the top of the hour, there's a 3-minute ad break. If you don't use your Prime sub right now, you're going to fucking see that ad. If you do not want to see those ads, all you need to do is subscribe. For $5 or for free with Twitch Prime or by getting gifted a sub, just stream an ad right now, baby. Let's go. After the House CR vote, a final motion to adjourn was offered as Rep. Steve Womack was about to slam the gavel. You can hear someone yell. Womack looks up. Is Representative Matt Gaetz. Womack doesn't stop, and Gaetz doesn't get recognized. That's funny. Shut the fuck up, Matt Gaetz. You fucking bitch. Fuck you. All right, let's watch this Historia Civilis guy doing a fucking... Oh, King Henry IV. Thank you for the 100 gifted subs. And Lero Bang, thank you for the 5 gifted subs. The man from the ether, thank you for the 5 gifted subs as well. That's 110 big ones, allowing 110 people to no longer see the ads at the top of the hour. Let's get into this. Historia Civilis made a video about work. I don't know who this guy is, but a lot of you guys have been begging me to watch this, and I'm excited. I'm already hooked up. I'm already hooked in. I'm already tapped in. One of capitalism's most durable myths is that it has reduced human toil. Fucking fire. Rainy draws a lot. Thank you for the 51 gifted subs.